Good morning, and welcome back to Jack's Coffee Break. My name is Jack, and today we are doing another one of our tutorial series. Today we're covering a huge topic that I've kind of been hesitant to cover because it's very complicated. But as you can probably tell from the title, we are going to be talking about Planet Zoo's education system. In order to have a successful zoo in Planet Zoo, you can't just place down a whole bunch of animals and have your guests turn up and expect that that's going to be everything that happens. It doesn't actually work like that. There's something critically wrong with this zoo that I've built. Right, it looks nice, it's very bland, it's a little bit boring, everything's kind of cookie cutter, cut and paste, there's not really a lot of variation, anything outside the habitats isn't very well decorated, but that's not the problem. The problem, if you don't see it, and I don't blame you if you don't, there's no education boards, and there's no donation bins. So how am I going to make any money? Well, let's talk about that. Because education and money are intrinsically linked in this game. And without education, you're not going to make a whole lot of money. They're tethered together. So it's important that we understand both. So let's look at our finances. Right now, in creative mode, we have unlimited finances, but that doesn't prevent us from looking at this page right here, our financial report. So you can see that in order to make this zoo, we're currently in December of year 2, and then we also have some of last year. So this zoo took about, what is that, 217,000 to build, thereabouts. You'll see that last year we made no profit whatsoever. And then this year we're starting to make a lot of money. We've got a decent amount of income. We're making all of that from two things right now: ticket sales and shop income. So I've got shops sprinkled around the zoo. I, of course, am going to make a certain amount of money off of my tickets. And if I want to look at how much I'm making right now, you can see that I've got $3 right here. So a $3 entry for adult, $3 entry for a child. And when you play this in franchise or in challenge mode, you're going to get little alerts occasionally, a little red bubble that says, guests think that tickets are underpriced. And it's red for you. It's a good thing in general because it encourages more people to come. But what you're actually seeing is that if you go over to guest thoughts, you can see right here we have 19% of people who think tickets are underpriced. But, for the most part, that's where you're going to find your guest thoughts. And guests are going to be happy about the prices of cheap tickets. But you and your bottom line, you're not going to be. You're going to want to update that pretty quickly. So we will deal with that just in a moment when I figure out where on earth my fox escaped to. So how you price your tickets really kind of depends on what your goal is. I typically do increments of $3 bumps just to see how everybody reacts. Because of the fact that we have lions and we have elephants, those two, because of their high appeal, are going to shoot these up. I'm actually going to set this to 15 for entry and then 13 for kids. I typically price kids a little bit lower than adults, just to kind of replicate what it'd be in real life, because you want to encourage families to bring their kids because it's supposed to be educational. But again, we're not educating anybody right now, right? So let's talk about what we have available for education, because we have quite a lot of tools. Everything is going to be here in this facilities. So first things first. Right, let's talk about our different speakers. So we have this ambient speaker. This ambient speaker is not educational. What is educational is the education speaker. So you see right here, it will pull up your little heat map that says guest education coverage. So I'm just going to plunk this down right here. And you'll notice that there's nothing coming out of the speaker, and that's because there's really nothing to talk about right now. I can set it to African spurred tortoise. So if we move too far away from the animal that it's set to, it's going to turn red, which means that it's not properly educating people because it's not close enough. Education must be close to the animal that you're targeting. So I set it to my African spurred tortoise, and now people are going to be forced to listen about the African spurred tortoise every time that they walk through this area. I like to lump them into places where guests can't escape from. They have to listen because it forces them to be educated. And this is absolutely a case of force your guests to learn. Next thing, we have two kinds of habitat education boards. We have this little guy right here, compounded with its standless version. This is really nice if you want to make your own habitat boards. And then we've got this conservation education board. Now this is different. It's not going to tell you about individual animals. Instead, what it's going to do is it's got these little boards about specific information topics. So species reintroduction, repair of the ozone, invasive species, ecotourism. I typically like to put a ton of these at the front of my zoo because it boosts your education very quickly. In general, you typically want to have as many of these boards as there are topics to talk about, right? So you're going to be having a lot of them. They're very handy, especially where you have dead space areas like this right here. Guests are not learning anything in this area. They don't have anything to see. They don't really care about the scenery. Like they do, they will comment about it, but it doesn't impact their happiness overall. It just makes them feel better and encourage them to move through the park, really. So I typically add education boards in this area where, you know, there's nothing else going on, but you still have people moving through. After that, there's a couple of kid-specific education, right? So for example, we have this giraffe height education. We also have a gorilla height education. Then we have this education paw print station, and then this education sound station. So unfortunately, these are only for kids. They are not going to impact the education of your adults. So the other thing that you can do is you can use these little habitat webcams. These are really good for your marketing. They can only provide up to 1 star for marketing, but it brings more guests into your park, and of course guests mean more money, and it also helps your overall park rating. I have tried in the past to set them up to billboards. So far I've been unsuccessful. I think that this is something that you have to do through like a little bit of back-end work. This is not to be confused with burrow cams. So burrow cams are part of the burrow system, which is like a little nest that you can build for certain animals. Those can easily be linked up to your billboard system. This helps to provide visibility when you have an animal that, you know, is hiding away and there's nothing to see in the habitat. It keeps your guests interested. So the next thing that we're going to have are these exhibit education boards. Now, I don't have any exhibits, but if I did, this is what I would use for them. Right. All right, so now we got to talk about 2 other more interactive things. So we have this animal talk point, right? And I'm actually going to set this up for my elephants up here. So let's go ahead and link our elephants because that's what I want to target. Next, you'll see that there's a status. This says can throw food. They have a specific time and day. So March, right? During the month of March, you're going to have a member of staff called an educator. During the month of March, your educator will come and give a talk for that entire month about this animal. When we get that member of staff, they could throw food that will bring the elephants over here so guests can get a closer look. You can also link up stadium seating. So you can, if I click link seating, if I had some available, then I would be able to link it through this. The way that you find that seating is you go into facilities, you go to seat, animal talk seating. And so now I can add these. They typically attach along paths, if you're good at that. I've never had occasion to really use these. I've never gotten them to work. Your guests are more than happy to just stand around a talk point and listen. You can add music. This is again for your real life humans. So the other thing that your educator is going to do besides these talks is they're going to give tours. So I have this thing right here. It's a little tour point, right? So I can set this tour point. And then I can open the tour manager. And this allows me to create routes. So I would want to set up a tour point at all of the different habitats that I want to show people. And then after that, the educator will grab them all up at a start point, and then they'll take them through the zoo on sort of a guided tour and tell them about all of the different animals, and then bring you back to wherever it dumps out. Delay Designer actually already has a really good tutorial about how to make tour routes actually work, and so I'm actually going to defer you to her video for the sake of brevity here, just because it's such an in-depth and complicated system that it would take us literally about 15 to 30 minutes to explain, and she does it way better than I do. What is this educator, right? So what staff do we have? So we've got 2 vets, we've got 3 keepers, a mechanic, security guards, caretakers, plenty of vendors, but we don't have an educator. So let's go ahead and put this guy down. In fact, let's get like 2. Okay, so this fellow right here is an educator. So this is their default uniform. They've got brown pants, purple shirt. They've got little logos. Yeah, so this is your educator. So he is going to have a couple of jobs. So as mentioned before, he is in charge of giving the animal talks over here at the little stands. He's also in charge of, once you get a tour set up, he'll be in charge of leading those. If we have, for example, an exhibit animal, occasionally our educator is going to come through and pick out one of these animals and give a little talk about it. So that's going to be a whole other thing that we can do. When educators aren't doing any of those things, however, they will also walk around and just give like random spot talks about whatever animal happens to be nearby. So they will also just passively increase your education. Now we've got all of the different items covered, and then we also have the educators and the 3 major tools that they can use, right? Why are we doing all of this, right? I think that that's probably the next important question, is how does this turn into money and guest satisfaction? So if you look down here, we see the average guest's needs. This is all of your basics plus education. And right now you see that we're doing basically nothing, right? We have a little bit about the spurred tortoise, we've got a little bit for the elephant, and nothing else is being educated on. But how do we know that? So we can come over here to our education tab, and as you can see right now, we have no stars in education, nothing. We don't have any vets doing advanced research. We don't have any education research complete. We have no research rating. We have no average guest education level, no animals to highlight. There's just nothing here. We've got conservation boards, education boards, speakers and talks. They're all listed down here, but we have no audio guides sold. This is a problem because education directly relates to one of our financial items, which is donations. We look at income, we can see donations, and we can see a per animal breakdown of those donations. Right now we're getting absolutely nothing. So the next thing that we can do is we can go ahead and add donation bins everywhere in the park, right? They don't need to actually be connected to any particular animal. I recommend that they are. Your guests are not going to donate because they got a really good drink at the Gulpy soda. You know, that's not going to be a thing. They will donate if they had a really great time looking at the lion enclosure. So typically I like to put donation bins near areas of guest viewership, but kind of out of the way so they're not blocking the view. That's just a style preference for me, but so long as it's near the animal that they want to donate about, they will. So I'm going to go ahead and add all of those real quick, and then I'll come back. Okay, so now we have a whole bunch of donation bins. Like I said, I typically place them at least one near each habitat, and then for really large ones, like our elephant enclosure over here that takes up just so much walking space, I actually have a bunch of donation bins. So now, let's go ahead and watch our finances, right? So previously our donations were at 0. Now we can see that we actually have some donations rolling in, and quite a lot of them actually. Unsurprisingly, our biggest earners are going to be the West African lion and the African savanna elephant. But our African wild dogs are actually gaining a lot of traction, as are our lemurs. So what's generating this, right? Like, why are people donating more for some animals, but not others? Well, there's a couple of factors that go into this. Part of it is your traffic, right? If more guests are near the elephant enclosure than are near, say, the bongo enclosure, more people are going to donate to the elephants than to the bongos. And as we can see, there's just not a lot of people over here. Part of the other thing that is going on here is the appeal, right? So we know instinctively that elephants and lions are going to just have more appeal than bongos are, right? That's just going to be a fact. It may be a sad fact for some people, but it is a fact. You know, lions are just a more interesting creature. But the other way that we can see this, if we go to our animals tab, we can see right here this appeal, right? And we can sort by appeal. So we have the animal's base appeal is a certain number. It can't really go lower than that, but it can always go higher. That's something important to understand. So these animals, our elephant and our 2 lions up here as our top rankers, you'll notice that some of them don't have any kind of ribbon next to them. Some have a bronze, some have a gold, some have a silver. So these little ribbons are awarded for how much the genetics of an animal is affecting their appeal. So you want animals with good genetics. You typically want to breed animals with good genetics. This is going to give you those ribbons, and those ribbons are going to contribute to the appeal. There's other components going on in here too. You know, there will be specific lifetime events that will contribute to the appeal. So you can see that we're getting a bonus of 731 for their stars. Here we go, so we've got lifetime stats. So we've got no offspring yet, no escapes, no fights, no injuries, and no infections. All of these are going to affect your appeal, and your appeal isn't going to increase this ribbon rating, the genetics will. I know that's probably clear as mud. The appeal of an animal, including the genetics, is going to draw more crowds to go see that animal, which in turn is going to bring more people into the area of your enclosure, increasing the amount of education that they'll receive by proximity, and therefore increasing the amount of donations that you're going to receive per that animal, which can help, especially if, you know, some of the less popular animals start to get some more appeal. Baby animals will have a lot of appeal. They'll immediately bring in large crowds that'll dwindle down once they go to adults. All of these things are what are going to draw more guests to an area, to a region, to an animal, to go and see it. That is going to increase the amount that they donate. But the quality of education that we're giving out at the zoo right now is next to nothing. We're basically telling guests, there is an elephant, it has tusks, its skin is gray, and it eats plants. So nothing you didn't already know. Okay. That's not good quality education. It's fine for a 2-year-old, but it's not going to cut it for anybody else. When we set up this education board, what we see is there's this little number right here, this little 1. So the next thing that we can do to increase our education is that we can start to add in research. What we need is one of these research centers. So this one right here is for your veterinarian. So it's got a little beaker symbol at the top. That's for your vet research. Your workshop is going to be for your mechanic research, right? So in order to get donations up, you want to have one of these vet researches, which I already have over here in my staff building. So we're going to go into my staff, and we'll see that I have 2 vets. They've both got pretty efficient workloads. I don't really want to reassign them because they've got enough work as it is, keeping the animals and making sure that diseases don't spread, right? So if I want to add research on top of this, I'm going to need a vet who can afford that kind of time. So I'm going to add a new vet. Her name is Twyla. Hello, Twyla. So now I'm going to go into my vet research. And I'll see that I've got some interesting things going on here. So all of the animals that I have available in the zoo, they're listed, and then some diseases that I have. So I have campylobacteriosis currently active in my zoo. And then underneath that, I have all of the other diseases that are currently inactive but are available to research for preventative research. And then here are all of the animals. So what I want to do is, I really want Twyla to be researching campylobacteriosis. This is not going to help with the education of my zoo. What this is going to do is it's going to add to disease prevention and control. That's still very important. We want to make sure that it's available to get to our animals, because the more time that we have animals off stage, quote unquote, the less time that they're, educating guests and making money, or potentially breeding, or having babies, or raising those babies. Basically, we just do not want our animals sick. The next thing that we need to do is we need to set up this work zone. I'm going to add a new work zone. I'm going to select all of the buildings in here. Just all of them. And I'm going to name this research. And now I'm going to go back over to Twyla, and I'm going to add her to research. I'm going to go over to her specifically, and I can see that she is in fact conducting research. She's doing great. Now I can go over to employment, and there's a whole bunch of things that she is being asked to do as part of her daily job. So she's asked to dispose of animal carcasses, tranquilize escaped animals, transport animals, treat animals, and conduct vet research. And here's the thing. I have 2 other vets who are already doing all of these things, and they're doing them great. They don't need any help. So I actually don't want her to treat animals. In fact, I don't want her to transport animals either. I have vets who can do that, and I have caretakers who can do that. That's the secondary job of the caretaker. They don't just sweep up garbage. I do want her to tranquilize escaped animals because she might be the closest person to the habitat. But I don't necessarily need her to dispose of animal carcasses. Again, I have 2 other vets who can do this. So now I've reduced the required amount of tasks that she needs to be cycling through on a schedule. She can just dedicate herself to her vet research. It's also going to tell us, depending on what you have ticked, I believe, or it may just do it automatically, that Twyla's work zone has an issue in that she doesn't have an animal in it. If it does give us this, we're just going to give her, the lemurs to look at. What that means is she's going to wander out of her building, she's going to look at the lemurs, discover that they are in fact doing just fine, and then go back to researching. So now we can come back to our vet research. Our other 2 vets have managed to cure our campy, so we no longer have to deal with that disease. So now that we have her work zone set up, she's just going to dedicate herself to research, which we can see she's doing a great job at. It's chugging along really nicely. We can speed this up a little bit, right? So now you can really see that gauge going. So now this is going to ding, we're going to have a little present available, and now we have research done on Campulo. So we want this, right? Because it helps for disease prevention for all of the reasons that we talked about, but it's not helping our animals specifically, right? It's helping to treat our animals, but our animals also need stuff. Notice that all of our animals have surprisingly low welfare. We go into here, you can see that we're in the green, some of them are in the yellow. There's a lot that could be said for their welfare, and they just need benefits, but it's because that they don't have any enrichment, and then we're not feeding them the best possible nutrition that we could be. The more that a animal's welfare increases, the higher that your donations are going to go up as well. So we can go over to animals. We go over to, this is our black and white ruffed lemur. So we have different grades of food quality. We can see that right now, because of our research, we can only feed them grade 1 food. We can't actually feed them anything better. We don't actually know what to feed them. Let's fix that. Go into our vet research. We're going to assign Twyla to our black and white ruffed lemurs. So you see that sometimes she comes in and out, right? Sometimes she is over here looking at the lemurs themselves. Sometimes she's in the research area doing computer work. And then she'll come back and forth and back and forth. So this is how the vet is conducting her research. And you'll see that one of our research is complete. We accept that. And now we have a secondary one. These can go by very quickly if you have a vet who's just dedicated to this. So we now have levels 1 unlocked, levels 2 unlocked, and she's working on level 3. And you can see on this page what we're getting. So we're going to get a toy enrichment, a food enrichment, and a fun fact for us, you know, for you and I, the actual players. Next we'll unlock food level 2, so we were just talking about that. We can finally feed them better food. We also get toy enrichment. After this, we're going to get an education bonus, so this is what we really, really want. So we want these education bonuses because when we educate our guests about these animals, through the boards, the speakers, through the talks, and through the tours, the overall benefits that we're going to receive are going to be magnified by whatever that education percentage was, which is just generally a good thing. So let's go ahead and put an education board down right here, because it's the most visible thing. Get our black and white ruffed lemur, and you can see that right now it still says 1. Here shortly, once we conduct our vet research again, and now this says 2. So this is going to give better information to our guests. Now, can you see that information be better on the board? Not really. It's a static image that just sort of updates a little bit, but they're going to be better enriched by it. They're going to get a better education rating, and then that will translate to them donating more. So it's a very simple, easy system once you know what you're doing, but you have to go through all of the little steps. You have to add your boards, you have to add your speakers, you have to add, you know, a certain type of employee. You have to give that employee all the benefits that they need. So now that I've got my level 4 research on my black and white ruffed lemurs, I now have this breeding research as well. So this means that it's going to increase the likelihood that a successful mating event will result in offspring. This is really good because, again, babies bring in a lot of money. You can then, once they're all grown up, release those animals into the wild. Any animal that you breed in your zoo can be released for conservation points. And then any animal can also be released for money, or if they hit a certain age threshold, they can be rehomed. But we have all of this enrichment, and we haven't placed any of it down yet. So let's go ahead and add some of our enrichment. I'm going to get this block of frozen fruit, and that's all that they really need. After that, I'm going to go into toys. I'm going to add a little sprinkler over here. Gift box for them to play with. Get another block of just ice. Get a cardboard box. Now you'll notice that even though the cardboard box and the gift box are, you know, they're different, but they add different levels. You'll notice that right now everything's giving 50, 50, 50, 50. I'm not at my 215 threshold. So why don't I just duplicate? Why don't I add a spare sprinkler over here? What you'll see is that I have this little mark that says 2. This means that I'm doubling up. After the first toy, each copy improves toy enrichment by either smaller amounts or none at all. You don't actually want to duplicate on your enrichment unless you absolutely have to. In my case, since my vet is working so quickly on the research, I'm not going to. Now this does not apply for food. You can add all the duplicates of food that you want. Just don't duplicate up on toys. Now my enrichment is going to shoot through the roof, and all of a sudden my welfare is up here at 89. This is probably my best animal in the entire zoo, really. Lastly, our nutrition. Their last meal quality was only 50%. It wasn't very good. So what we can do is we can come over to the habitat barrier, not the animal, but the habitat barrier. Click on the gate. We can go to the animal, go to grade 1 food quality, and we can bump this up to grade 2 food quality. This is going to be more expensive. Instead of 250 per feed, it's going to be 275 per feed. But it is going to increase our animal's overall quality of life, which means that guests are going to be happier, and therefore they're going to give us more money through the donations. It also means that they're more likely to stick around, therefore more likely to read our education, and therefore to gain benefits from our education. So you see how all of this is cyclical. You need to have one piece in order for all of the pieces to work together. Alright, so we've just gotten our level 3 education bonus. So once again, this is going to improve the quality. And even though I've only talked about it in the context of the boards increasing the number, this is just because it's the most visual way for me to show you. This is also going to be true of your little habitat speakers as well. Now remember, when you do this in franchise mode, your veterinarians are not going to start off at 5 stars. The more that you train your staff, the more efficient they're going to become at all of these different jobs. This is true for all of your staff. So that's roughly the basics of what we're looking at, but there are a couple of last things that I want to cover. So hopefully we'll go ahead and get our research done for our lemur pretty quickly here. And then yes, so that is complete. We now have everything available for these lemurs. We have the best education available. Now we have something available called advanced research. So we're going to get advanced research bonuses. Advanced research doesn't do a whole lot of things on the surface. What it mainly provides is a generalized education bonus to your zoo, which can be helpful for things like your reputation and then your overall just education bonus to your guests. And this can result in more money and a better rating, but it may also be more cost effective once you hit maximum on all of your researched animals to just go ahead and fire some of those vets. So it just depends on what you want to do. So Twyla is completely done with our black and white rift lemur. She's no longer going to be researching this animal. She's just going to be sitting idly. We can move her to another animal, which, considering how many we don't have researched, would be ideal. Let's say that we do move her to this advanced research. We get this bonus right here. So we get these advanced research bonus points, right? Ideally, what you want is you want a research facility, not just like the little box, but you want to have multiples of those little boxes with lots of vets all researching. You want to pile through all of the research available for all of your animals and then have them doing advanced research. This is going to give you those bonuses. I hope that this gives you a good idea of what education is in Planet Zoo, why we do it, and how it matters, and how you can ultimately end up making a lot of money by just being a good zoo. just attempting to do your best. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Take care, have fun, and of course, happy building.